On the last day of my sophomore year of high school, I woke up with a blinding migraine. The world was a throbbing, fluorescent nightmare. I managed to drag myself to school, knowing I just had to get through the day, but by lunchtime, the pain was unbearable. I couldn't even look at my phone. I stumbled to the nurse's office. The nurse, a kind, frazzled woman named Mrs. Davison, took one look at me and knew it was serious. "Oh, you poor thing," she said, guiding me to one of the cots in the quiet, dark back room. "You just lie down here. I'll turn off the lights. The final bell is in 2 hours. I'll come wake you before then." I collapsed onto the cot, the coolness of the pillow a small mercy. The darkness was a profound relief, and the silence of the nurse's office, insulated from the restless energy of the rest of the school, was a blessing. I fell into a deep, pain-induced sleep. When I woke up with a gasp, my heart pounding. I didn't know what had woken me, but I knew something was wrong. The room was pitch black, not just dim, but utterly dark. I sat up, my migraine gone, but replaced by a thick, disorienting fog. I fumbled for my phone. The screen flared to life, illuminating the small room. It was 9:47 p.m. A wave of pure panic washed over me. I had been asleep for over 8 hours. The final bell had rung, the buses had left, the teachers had gone home. Mrs. Davison had forgotten me. I was locked inside the school. I stumbled out of the nurse's office into the main hallway. The school at night was a completely different entity. The familiar, bustling corridors were now long, dark, echoing tunnels. The only light came from the emergency exit signs, which cast a sickly green glow on everything. The silence was the worst part. It was a heavy, oppressive silence that seemed to absorb all sound. I tried the front doors. They were chained and padlocked. I ran through the maze of hallways, trying every door that led outside, but they were all locked tight. I was about to break a window as a last resort when I heard a sound. It came from the far end of the school, from the freshman locker hallway. It was a loud, metallic clang. It was the unmistakable sound of a locker door being slammed shut. I froze, my blood turning to ice. A janitor? A security guard? I held my breath, listening for footsteps or the jingle of keys, but there was nothing but that profound silence. I started walking cautiously in the opposite direction, towards the gym, hoping to find a fire exit I had missed. Then I heard it again. Clang. This one was louder, closer. It sounded like it came from the next hallway over. A terrible thought began to form in my mind. I ducked into an empty classroom and peered through the small wire mesh window in the door. I looked down the long, green-lit hallway, and then I heard it a third time. Clang. A locker door at the far end of the hall I was watching swung violently shut, all on its own. My mind reeled, trying to find a rational explanation, air pressure, a draft, but I knew what I was seeing. The sound wasn't random, it was sequential. Someone, or something, was moving down the hallways, unseen, slamming each locker door one by one. It was a slow, methodical procession, a terrifying drumbeat marking its approach. I ran. I abandoned all attempts at stealth and just sprinted through the dark, echoing halls, the sound of my own frantic footsteps a counterpoint to the rhythmic approaching clang. 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 It was getting faster. It was no longer one hallway over. It was in the same hallway as me, just around the corner. It was hunting me. I finally found a small window in the back of the teacher's lounge that wasn't reinforced with wire. I grabbed a chair and smashed the glass, not caring about the noise or the cuts on my hands. I scrambled out into the cool night air and ran across the empty football field, not stopping until the school was just a dark shape behind me. I never told anyone the full story. I just said I got locked in and panicked. But I know what I heard. The last day of school is about the bell that dismisses you. I learned that night that in an empty school there are other sounds, other signals, and they aren't meant to let you go. They're meant to let you know you're not alone. I was an English teacher at an old, sprawling middle school for 10 years. I loved my job, and I always felt a sense of bittersweet nostalgia on the last day of school. After the final bell rang and the last of the kids had streamed out into the summer afternoon, a profound quiet would settle over the building. I always stayed late on that last day, taking my time to pack up my classroom, reflecting on the year. This particular year, the principal had sent out a memo a week prior. Please be aware, it read, that a new temporary custodial crew, contracted through a third-party company, will be starting their summer deep clean immediately after dismissal on the final day of school. So as I was carefully taking down student artwork from the walls that afternoon, I wasn't surprised to see a man appear at my open classroom door. I had never seen him before. He was tall and unnervingly thin, with pale skin and dark, deep-set eyes that seemed to absorb the light. He was wearing a plain gray janitorial jumpsuit, but he wasn't carrying any equipment. No cart, no mop, no keys. He just stood there, leaning against the doorframe. "Hello," I said with a friendly smile. "You must be with the new summer crew." He smiled back, but his smile was thin and didn't reach his eyes. "That's right," he said, his voice a soft, low monotone. "Just checking to see when you'll be done. We have to get started soon. Have to clean out all the old things before the new year." There was something about the way he said old things and the way his dark eyes swept over the colorful, cheerful contents of my classroom that made my skin crawl. The friendly smile felt like a mask. "I should be out of here in about an hour," I said, my own smile feeling stiff and unnatural. "Good," he said, still not moving. "We like to be thorough." He just stood there for another minute, watching me in complete silence, before giving a slow nod and disappearing back into the empty hallway. The encounter left me deeply unsettled. My peaceful, nostalgic task of packing up my room now felt tainted with a sense of dread. I suddenly felt an urgent need to leave. I decided to pack the rest of my things the following week. I gathered my purse and my car keys and walked out into the hallway. It was empty and silent. But as I started walking towards the main office to sign out, I heard a sound behind me. It was the soft, scuffing sound of work boots on linoleum. I glanced over my shoulder. It was him, the tall, thin janitor. He was at the far end of the hall about 100 feet away, just watching me. When he saw me look, he started walking towards me, his pace slow and deliberate, his footsteps echoing in the empty hall. A jolt of pure fear went through me. I walked faster. His footsteps behind me matched my pace. I wasn't just being paranoid. He was following me. I ducked into the main office, my heart hammering. I told myself I was just grabbing my final paycheck from my mailbox on the wall. The office was dark, the only light coming from the hallway. As I fumbled for my mail, I glanced at the principal's desk. Lying on top of a stack of papers was a bright pink memo. My eyes scanned the first line. "By urgent update. Please be advised the start date for the summer custodial crew has been postponed to next Monday, June 10th, due to contractor insurance issues. No temporary personnel will be on site this week." I read it twice, the words not making sense at first. And then the cold, horrifying truth crashed down on me. The man in the hallway was not a janitor. He had no reason to be in the building. He was an intruder. At that exact moment, I heard the sound I had been dreading. The heavy, metallic clank and rattle of the main school doors being chained shut from the inside. The sound echoed through the entire building. And then I heard his slow, deliberate footsteps stop just outside the office door. The doorknob began to turn. My friends and I were idiots in high school. For our senior prank on the last day of school, we decided on a classic. We would hide in the school until after dark, and then spend the night covering the principal's office in toilet paper and rearranging the trophies in the main display case. It seemed like a harmless, legendary way to end our high school careers. There were 4 of us. Our hiding spot was the old, rarely used photography darkroom in the school's basement. It was perfect. Windowless, soundproof, and forgotten by everyone. We slipped in during the chaos of the final bell, locked the door from the inside, and settled in for a long wait. We listened as the final announcements echoed through the halls. The sounds of joyful chaos faded, and finally, the heavy footsteps of the last janitor, and the definitive click of the main doors being locked. We had done it. We emerged after midnight into a silent, dark school. It was thrilling. We felt like kings of an empty castle. Armed with flashlights and backpacks full of supplies, we made our way upstairs to the main hallway. This hallway was famous, lined on both sides with the framed composite photos of every graduating class since the school opened in the 1950s. As we walked down the hall, my friend Chloe stopped. "Guys, look at this," she whispered, shining her flashlight on the photo of the class of 1958. We gathered around. The photo of the black and white smiling students was normal, except for one thing. Someone had taken a thick black marker and crudely scribbled out the eyes of every single student and teacher in the picture, leaving them with dark, hollow sockets. "Whoa, creepy," my friend Sam said. "Must have been part of an old prank." But as we moved down the hall, we saw that it wasn't just one photo. It was all of them. Class of 1959, 1960, 1961. Every single student in every single photo had their eyes blacked out. It was a meticulous, decades-long act of vandalism. As we got to the more recent years, the photos in color, the effect was even more disturbing. Hundreds of smiling, hopeful faces, all rendered void and terrifying. Then we got to the photos from the 2000s, and we noticed something new, something that made the hair on my arms stand up. In the background of the class of 2002 photo, barely visible behind the top row of bleachers, was a shape. A tall, shadowy figure standing in the back of the gym. It was blurry and indistinct, but it was definitely there. Then we moved to the class of 2003. The figure was there again, but it was slightly closer, slightly more in focus. We moved down the line year by year, a growing dread settling over us. 2004, 2005, 2006. With each passing year, the shadowy figure in the background of the class photo got a little closer, a little clearer, as if it were slowly walking towards the camera over the span of a decade. It was like watching a terrifying slow-motion movie. Our prank was forgotten. We were completely unnerved, but we had to see it through. We finally reached the end of the hall, where the photo of our own graduating class, taken just 2 months prior, had been hung last week. We shone our 4 flashlights on it. The eyes of our classmates were not blacked out. We all looked normal, smiling, excited for the future. But our relief was instantly shattered. We scanned the back row, and there he was, the shadowy figure. He was no longer in the blurry background of the gym. He was standing right there, in the middle of the back row of students, shoulder to shoulder with our classmates. His form was clearer than ever before. He was tall and wore a dark suit, but his face was a pale, featureless blur, like an overexposed photograph. He had been there all along. He was in our picture. At that exact moment, from the far end of the dark, silent hallway, came the unmistakable, blinding flash of a camera, and it was followed by a low, dry chuckle. We screamed and ran, our flashlights bouncing crazily off the walls, revealing the hundreds of eyeless faces watching us flee. We didn't stop until we had broken a window in the cafeteria and scrambled out into the night. We never found out who was at the end of that hall, but I know that our prank wasn't the only one planned for that night. We had stumbled into a much older, more sinister tradition, and I'm terrified to think about what would have happened if we had stayed long enough for that year's photo to be edited with a black marker.